SaaS Backwards is sponsored by Austin Lawrence Group, specializing in demand gen for SaaS. It sure is noisy. I deleted 100 emails from vendors just this morning. Your buyer has gotten better at ignoring you, and you're gonna need a big idea if you want to cut through all that clutter. Austin Lawrence is just the right agency to help you find it. So if your campaigns are falling on deaf eyeballs, let's talk. Visit austinlawrence.com today and let's build something bigger.
Welcome to the SaaS Backwards podcast, where we reverse engineer the success of fast-growing SaaS firms and explore strategies CMOs and CEOs are using to drive their businesses forward.
Welcome to SaaS Backwards, a podcast that helps SaaS CEOs and CMOs to accelerate growth and enhance profitability. Our guest today is Gabe Lullo, CEO of Alleyoop, an outsourced SDR service that helps companies maximize ROI through lead generation, relationship management, and event support. Hey, Gabe, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ken. I'm a huge fan and really appreciate you having me on. I'm really excited to talk.
Yeah, it's a great topic, and connecting with customers is what we really want to do here. So I think we're going to at least give one or two great pearls for our listeners. But before we dig in, could you please tell listeners just a little bit more about you and your company, Alleyoop?
For sure. I'm a CEO. I'm not a founder, though. I started actually working here and worked my way up to CEO. We are a company called Alleyoop. We do like basketball, and we use that analogy to heart. We are really the ultimate assist, if you will, like in basketball, when you throw it up and get the slam dunk from somebody else. We're the same thing. We are a sales development agency. So we focus on the people side of it, right? So we staff, manage, train, and run sales development departments and programs for our clients, whether they're very large, big companies to help them, grow and scale, or whether literally founder-led sales companies come to us and we can build them a sales development function.
Great. Yeah. And, it's so interesting. Even from the very young companies, they do need this kind of push to be able to get in front of their target customers. Maybe in the younger, the more important it is, right? Less
Right.
momentum, need to really get at it quick. So let's dig into our podcast topics. Let's start with straightforward. Why would a SaaS company outsource its SDR function? What's the thinking that a CEO needs to go through, or head of sales or head of marketing, to justify that decision?
Yeah, I mean, like you were just saying, it's really about the maturity and the tenure of the actual sales or the actual company in itself, right? A lot of founders who are in SaaS, sometimes they're product guys, they're developers, they're not salespeople. And, it's that old, decision of, do I buy versus build? Does it make sense to build your own sales development function from scratch day one, and maybe your expertise is not there? Or does it make sense to buy it from an agency that knows what they're doing, with eventually the opportunity to build it yourself? Actually, what's unique about us is that we really understand that not everyone is going to want to use us forever, right? And so when they come to an agency, our reality is sometimes they're going to want to bring it in-house. So we can actually build them a function day one, because it makes sense to do that economically, with expertise, of course, involved. And then eventually they can take it over and bring that in-house, so we can help facilitate that too. So I would say the reason why, to answer your question, is that it's going to be more cost effective, and you're going to probably get significantly better results because you're working with a team of people that know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe there's one or two more things I think that are really important there, which is time to market.
Yep.
Right. So if you're, especially at a young company, you've got a big bag of rattlesnakes you're working with, right? So, take one out of the bag and say, you handle it, right? So you don't have to worry about that initial traction in the market. And I think managing this kind of function for a young company also can be a distraction, right? If you're not successful with your first hire or hires, you can lose a lot of management time and attention to building up the SDR function.
For sure. I mean, there's really 5 layers to it, right? People think, oh, I just, get a phone dialer and send them a list and hire a rep, and, I got meetings. That's not like that. Hiring an SDR is one thing and finding them is another. But secondly, you got to keep them, right? 45% of SDRs leave that company within the first 12 months for various reasons. Maybe it's a bad hire. Maybe it's a great hire and they want to get promoted to an AE, or maybe they can make an extra couple $1,000s a year at a competitor across the street and they leave, right? So there's a huge turnover there. So just keeping that and managing that and keeping that demand of the role is hard. More importantly, though, there's a lot of support around it. Are you using the best dialers? What is the best dialers? Do you get a good price point for the best dialer, right? What's the best data? What data providers work for my ICP? A lot of people don't know that. There's a lot of data companies out there. Some of them are good for one ICP versus another. Thirdly, you got to create messaging. You got to get email tools. So there's supporting the SDR and managing the function is what you have to look at. And that's the pricey part, right? Just hiring somebody who's going to make cold calls for you. Yeah, anyone could do that. Supporting it to make sure it's fundamentally working, that's the hard part. Right now, the average SDR Bridge report came out last year, makes 40 outbound calls a day. And that's factoring in most companies who don't know how to manage it. We do 5x that. And so, getting the most out of what you want, which is that time to market, is what's important. We can get meetings on the calendar in first 3 weeks of engagement, first 2 weeks, even the first week. Most people, it's going to take 3 to 4 months to even see if it's a good fit. So those are things to think about when hiring your own reps versus doing it with an agency.
And I think also I've run into too many CEOs that discount the importance of who that person is on the phone, the training for that person. Can't tell you how many times I've run into clients, prospects say, yeah, we've got our summer batch of interns going to make those cold calls. And it's like, okay, so the people who know nothing are going to call the prospects who mean everything. And what are they going to do with your opportunities and brand? It's like,
when I was a kid, I was told by my parents, first impressions are everything, right? So like your face of your company, the first impression, where the rubber meets the road, like we're going to put that in the hands of someone who is very transient, ill prepared, and not managed and supported correctly with very little experience. That's very, very scary. When I put my marketing hat on, right? Like that's not the brand recognition we want day one. And it's interesting.
It's a winning strategy, right? That's a real winner.
What I love best is I put my best SDRs on our program. And it's interesting. They're calling on behalf of us, right? They're setting up meetings for us. And our pitch is really simple. Like, do you like this phone call right now? And if you do and take the meeting, maybe we're a good fit for you. And every single time my sales team, my AEs get on a demo, first 30 seconds, they usually compliment the person who set up the demo. And from there, when that happens, it's almost a guaranteed deal because we're a product of the product. And again, think about that. Your first impression is everything, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think also I want to just make sure I note something. I want to put a little highlighter on something you said. You have a pretty unusual background in the data business. And I think the quality of data is the difference in the quality of the sources of data maybe isn't appreciated. And that's something I think I want to talk with you about, in this podcast is, what's your sense of like the quality of phone data in these various vendors and also what your take is on intent?
Yeah, it's interesting because, we started like any startup organically and we just started to have conversations and, we started to need to buy tech and data and dialers and tools ourselves to, do what we do, right? And in those conversations, our founder started telling people, hey, this is what we do. And this is why we're buying your data. And this is why we're buying your tech. And, we were Salesforce's, one of Salesforce's first customers. And all throughout that startup 15 years ago, we came across multiple companies that we were looking to purchase, telling them what we were doing. And guess what? They asked us for support and they asked us for help. And so we were really the company that was our, message on the street, just companies like ZoomInfo, companies like Orem, companies like SalesLoft, some companies like Outreach.io, Sendoso, Ring Central. These are all huge companies today. We were the founding SDR team and agency for all of those companies. And so it's interesting on how that all started. Now we can represent any industry and, been doing this for over a decade and a half, but that's where we started. And so data to us, we know it very, very, no pun intended, intently, because it is something that we have a long-standing relationship with a lot of data providers because we built their SDR teams specifically for them and have great relationships there. Intent, though, is super important. We are using intent data to support our calling efforts all day, and it is by far how we prioritize our calls for our clients.
Because, I was really concerned about this, and I think I've mentioned it in a podcast, that my sense of marketing and salespeople is that they're a lot like 8-year-olds at a soccer game. Everybody goes to the ball, right?
Right.
Nobody plays their position. They all run to the ball.
No strategy. Yeah.
And so if everybody's running to the intent data, it could be that all the people that have given off signs of intent are getting swamped with outreach. I'm wondering if you've experienced that in the real world.
For sure. I mean, I remember when I had to move and I filled out one of those forms for a moving truck, and then all of a sudden I got 500 phone calls of moving trucks, right? So, those things for sure happen. And it's also why we don't put all of our eggs in that basket. Intent is for sure something we want to, hit on and connect with, because you could call it low-hanging fruit. But I think what separates us and just separates the SDR function is the opposite, which is those lost lead opportunities. Like, how about all those conversations that you didn't call back, or all the AE conversations that you had with 6 months ago, but now your software is a totally different software as it was 6 months ago? Who's going back after those conversations? So we really treat the lost lead approach, we call it, just as important as intent. But again, intent is something that we are definitely want to strike while the iron's hot as well. And most importantly, differentiate ourselves from all the other ones that are calling. That's really where the message resonates, because usually those people who are calling that, the SDRs just aren't good. And it's just very scripted and very templated and very cold. We want to separate ourselves. So I think if you're going after intent, how do you be different than everyone else who's going after it? But also don't put all your eggs in that basket. Look at all the other contacts that people aren't reaching out, that is gold sitting in there.
So there's another great reminder. You're just going to keep giving us these pearls, but I'm going to highlight this one for you and
Sure.
our listeners. In a number of sales training classes I've been in, closed lost, underappreciated, and maybe the easiest business to get. For just that reason, if it's 6-9 months ago, they might have bought something else, or the dreaded no decision, and now they really feel the pain, and they haven't heard from you in 6 months. So
AEs are horrible at nurturing. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. They like the low-hanging fruit. They like, most recent demo that they closed. And it's fine. Like, they're trying to hit a quota. That's why marketing is so important. That's why SDRs are so important. It's because of the nurturing of it. We all heard the catchphrase again. Another one is like, timing is everything in business, right? So if you're not nurturing correctly, you're losing that ability to find the timing. And how many times do we realize, oh my God, I just saw them sign up or move to this company or that company or buy something, and all of a sudden I had that deal 6 months ago. What happened? Well, you never followed up with them. But asking AEs to do that is challenging now, especially in this economic landscape, because they're so busy, because they're being asked to do more things than ever before, right? So with that being said, they're not going after it. So you have to figure out reasons to call somebody. And we're so good at that, right? Like a new acquisition, a new feature, right? A new solution, a new upgrade, a new version. There's always going to be a reason, especially in software, to call somebody and update them on what's going on. And so use those very little tools to re-engage. And it doesn't even have to be, hey, you're ready to buy. It's like, hey, just want to let you know about this new tool or we just, hey, just purchase this company, or we just launched this territory, and just start the conversation over and over again.
I think also underappreciated is, really being in a structured way observant of your prospects, so that you can see, especially if there are external triggers that will generate a need for what you do. For example, you talked about, prospect bought something. If they bought another warehouse and you're in the distribution software business, hey, there's an opportunity to revisit distribution software. Hey, now you have 3 locations, not 2. Does your current software really support optimization across, your full estate? So lots of ways to use your own generated data and the observations to have those better conversations.
And I think just following, people's career moves on LinkedIn is something most people don't do, right? Like, okay, maybe there's a VP of sales and you're trying to sell software to them, and they said, well, we're in a contract or this or that, or I couldn't get approval or this or that. And then they just left and moved to another VP of sales role, a different company. call them up, congratulate them, send them a box of cookies, do whatever it is, but get them excited to talk with you again. It's a whole new opportunity. Maybe that part of their role is to buy your software and implement it day one. Like, so those are little triggers that you can call them intent, but most people don't realize that's how you should be going after people.
Totally. Hey, this is going to be funny in this, as deep
Okay.
as we've gotten in the episode, but I hear it too many times, and I want you to put this one to rest. Is the
Okay.
cold call dead?
No.
Well,
I love this.
we hear it a lot, right?
We hear it a lot. It's all over LinkedIn. I mean, come on. It is for people who don't know how to do it. It's harder. Here's what my answer is. Is cold call dead? No, it is harder. It is harder than it's ever been, but so is email and so is LinkedIn, right? Those are the three channels, right? LinkedIn, phone calls, and email, unless, smoke signals is still a thing yet. I don't know, but
Hey, we still send postal mail.
right, exactly. But, let's look at the channels. And is cold call dead? No, it is harder. And why do I say it's harder? Well, you just have to be better at it. You have to be more prepared for it. And I think we're just putting people who don't know how to cold call on the phone and then, saying it's dead. That's not dead. And so, yeah, there's tools, there's technology, there's dialers, there's AI platforms that allow you to make up for it being harder. There's people who are better on the phone than not. There's management, there's call listening. If you think about Gong and Chorus and all of these tools out there that allow for us to be able to cold call, it's, I think, never a better time to cold call. And when we take a look at the tens of thousands of calls we make a day, 85% of the appointments we're booking still come from a cold call. So we can judge it or we can look at data. And my data is pretty big, and I can tell you it's not dead.
That's great. I mean, I think that we need to get past our own prejudices too, which is, I hate being cold called. I
Sure.
really don't like it. Maybe I'm not getting called by the right people, but they're not really getting to me with good messages. But I think you're absolutely right. I believe your data, first of all. And I'm sure clients wouldn't stick with you if you weren't able to bear it out. But let's talk about what makes for the better cold call, right? When we were talking before we started recording the episode, we said there's sort of getting the interest and then getting the conversation, right? Getting past the initial reluctance and then getting into a little bit of a call, right? We think we called it the jab and the uppercut. So
Yeah,
walk us through what that looks like.
for sure. And well, the first thing that we're noticing, which is interesting, is that a lot of people are asking our reps right now questions that only humans can answer, right? They're testing us to see if we're AI. And hey, what's the weather over there? Where are you located? What was the score of the game last night? Right. And they're literally asking because we're seeing that people aren't trusting AI and they don't want to talk to AI, and I think trust is super important, especially now than ever before with AI, that you have to get that across in the beginning of the phone call. Right. So you have to be able to answer that, say, am I going to trust this person who's calling me right now? So you have to sound different, right? You can't say, hey, and then start selling about your company. Hey, I'm calling with Alleyoop or sales, and you start what I call snowballing people, and you're starting to pitch slap them like we get pitch slapped on LinkedIn. We don't want to do the same thing on a phone call. So you want to sound human. You want to sound authentic. You want to be real. You want to know who you're calling. You want to know why you're calling them, and you want to make them like you. I mean, it's sales 101. And so doing those things is really the best way to do it. So what we do is we try to do an opener that, again, alleviates all of the stresses of knowing that this is a cold call, because no one likes to get a cold call. So let's do what we can to make it not sound like a cold call. And then secondly, let's go ahead and give them your message. So I say the jab, right, is that initial first 10, 15 seconds to get them knowing the things I just mentioned. And then once they say, yeah, I'll give you a moment of my time, or I'll give you 30 seconds, you hit them in the mouth with your message. And it's 30 seconds. It's tight. It's powerful. It's concise. It has sizzle. It creates curiosity. This is how we analogize the sales development function. We're the trailer to the movie, right? We're not going to tell you the ending to the movie. We're not going to say everyone dies at the end of the movie. We're not going to give you the pricing at the end of we're going to go ahead and just give you enough information to get excited to go spend time and watch a movie. You may not like the movie. You may not buy. You may not want to do anything after that. You may not say it's a great movie, but the SDR job is to get them excited enough to watch the movie. And we're that trailer, we're that preview.
And so what is it? What does it take to get the prospect to go from 45 seconds on the phone with one of your folks to looking forward to a meeting with an AE?
Yeah. I mean, when I start a phone call, if I called you right now, Ken, and I said, "Hey, Ken, thanks so much for taking my call. I know I'm catching the middle of your day. Actually, how are you doing today?" And I just genuinely ask that. And usually, "I'm all right. How are you?" And they usually ask, "How are you?" if they're a nice person. And I say, "Hey, I'm actually really great. I just booked 2 meetings today. Hopefully, you're my third one." And I say that. Now, that's all I say. Now, what did I actually say there? Well, what I said was, one, I'm calling to book a meeting with you, right? Like, I just booked 2 meetings. That's my job. I didn't even say my name yet. I didn't say anything really. All I did in that message was tell you my goal here is to book you a meeting. And then I also made you feel a little guilty if you told me no and you don't even know why I'm calling yet. Right. So I humanized it, and maybe you chuckled a bit. I laughed at it, and we actually laughed. So in just the first 10 seconds, I say that, and it gets people knowing why I'm calling, and know that I'm a human, and makes you maybe a little guilty to hang up on me. Right. And so then that's what I say to start the conversation. And then it's 3 bullet points, right? I say 3 bullet points, usually a factual data one, because that is for your analytical personality types. Usually a return on investment or money one or a profitability one. That's for your financial people, right? And then usually one that is maybe more of a morale or customer satisfaction, something that is more people driven. And we break it down on personality types. Now, I just told you exactly how to run a cold call for any product and any service in the world, right? You can literally parachute a rep onto any program in the world and run a cold call. And then at the end, you sell the appointment, not the product. You sell the person, not the product. You sell the expert, not the product. And then it would be all about edifying and promoting Ken as my AE and making Ken the greatest thing since sliced bread, not the product. So that's what we did. So we got him willing to give me 30 seconds in a human way. I told them about the product in 3 different personality types so I can relate to anyone I talk to. And then I sold the person and got yourself out of the way so you're not getting all these questions hitting you. So you stay on the phone and tell them all the ends. Is that what you're looking for, Ken? I think that's what you wanted, but I'm not sure.
Well, I think it was good. I guess I was curious what gets past people's reticence to take a meeting in today's world.
Well, there's a lot of objections right now that are being thrown at us. And the biggest one right now is really just people are so busy. And I think you have to share enough value on that message to get them willing to spend literally 20 to 30 minutes. It's not even about, if I say, "Hey, I have $1 million right now in a box and I just need you to come and pick it up," like, people are going to say, "Oh, I just don't have the time right now to do that." It's like you can offer them anything and save their entire business, but they just don't have the time for it. So really working on figuring out how to get them excited to just spend the 30 minutes, I know is almost elementary, but it is really what is the biggest piece right now, to just get people to sit down for 30 minutes. And so if you can get that going, you're going to have more success.
So kind of moving on a little bit, you mentioned a couple of times about AI in the business.
Sure.
And certainly in my business, everybody asks me, "Hey, is AI going to replace your writers? Or, are ads going to be designed by AI? What's going to happen to all the creative people?" And I'm sure you're asked, is AI really a threat to the outbound calling business, the human callers? And I
Yeah, we
know
hear it
you've
all the
got a
time.
good answer for it, but I want to
Well, I
wind
hear it
it.
all the time, and it's like, well, I don't know. Is AI going to replace you watching demos and making business decisions? Like, are we just going to have your AI talk to my AI, and then like we just don't do anything anymore? And if AI is going to just talk to each other, maybe we'll be there one day. I'm not sure, but the reality is AI really replaced that whole trust factor. And humans buy from humans. I don't think that's going to change the tool to enhance all of the things that we're doing. I'm sure you're using AI in your messaging, but I'm also sure that you're not reliant on using AI only for your messaging, right? And so we use AI for sure, but in ways to enhance the function, not to just fully replace it. Most people, when polled, when they have been asked, "Would you buy from an AI bot?" they say no. So that's how we operate.
Yeah, I mean, I forget the name of the company that's sort of all over LinkedIn at the moment, promoting AI-based lead follow-up and
Sure.
calling. And it's this one, perfectly scripted conversation that sounds real. I can only imagine what the actual reality is on those things. Probably not all that great.
I haven't gotten one yet, right? And I'm prospected significantly. I put myself out there, I post on LinkedIn every day. I haven't gotten someone to call me that is an actually AI bot. And I take my cold calls on purpose because I want to hear what people are doing, right? So I actually am one of the only ones. So if you're listening, you want to cold call me, cold call me.
So like
But
if people want to
so
practice their calling skills, they should call you. So at the end, we'll have you give out
yeah,
your number. But the only thing I would say is they should be prepared that if they're any good, you might try and hire them, right?
I was about to mention exactly that. I've hired a lot of SDRs from cold calls, but I will say, yeah, that may happen. But, to keep it real, I will say this, I have not gotten a call that is able to do what it is we can do yet. And I don't know what the future holds. I'm a huge fan of the Matrix movies. So I'm maybe one day, but I don't know.
I mean, my view is similar to yours. I think these systems actually aren't going to continue to improve very much because so much of the content they're being trained on is being generated by these systems themselves.
Right.
So I think that maybe in calling, a large language model could be aimed at the Gong data, Gong recordings, and that might be an infinitely getting better resource to train them on. But I just feel like, especially in the written content, I don't see it as a big threat. I mean, it's like everybody was an art director when desktop publishing came around. Now everybody thinks they're, an email marketer because they can get on ChatGPT and ask for subject lines. I think that the opportunity is greater than the threat, I would say. That's kind of how I'd look at it.
I totally agree.
And when I say opportunity, what I mean is in understanding what might work, like have the AI analyze your 10,000 calls in a week or a day for what's most effective, which is, what you buy Gong for anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
Lastly, I want to land on a topic that I think is really important, which is, what should an agreement look like for an outsourced SDR function? What are like important deal points that a head of marketing or sales should be thinking about, not in the weeds, but sort of like what are the 3 or 4 really important things that someone might want to look for in an agreement with this kind of service?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say they want performance only or commission only. And I mean, if you think about it, are you going to hire your employees on full only commission for your full-time sellers? And the answer would probably be not at first, right? No, maybe eventually for sure. Also, what you'll notice is with those types of performance only agreements, you're getting really mud thrown against the wall and seeing what sticks. You really lose on a truly qualified lead because you're having maybe call centers or multiple people calling multiple ICPs and they're just sending over, hey, this falls within a VP of sales, so let me send it over to you. Companies have to, in our space, have to be profitable too, right? And so if you're looking performance only, the company is not going to take a risk on that and just burn money. Also, keep in mind that, you need to sell and you need to create revenue too. So it's a marriage and you have to understand that we're booking meetings, those appointments have got to be sold. So we have to make sure we both have skin in the game. In addition to that, when it comes to, program or paying well over margin for this, I don't advise you to do that either. So I would say do something that is more of a hybrid approach where you can have a program fee attached to it, but also have some opportunities to put the agencies a variable on that. And so you can actually start sharing in that revenue. And so we have short-term agreements here on purpose to get into a position where we can do hybrids like that. And I think those are the best way because it's a true partnership at that point, right? And we want people to have the best results. Best results for us means scaling and growing teams. And of course, they want the same thing. So I think when you look at an agreement, make sure that both parties are winning as much as the other party is, and there's growth opportunities for both.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think if you're going to partner effectively, you have to have easy conversations about the terms, right? It shouldn't be hard. If it's hard to come to an agreement, then it's going to be harder to stay in a relationship. So I think that's a really good point. Make it so that it looks good to everybody at the outset, probably going to work out better.
Yeah. And in our space, I mean, like we were just talking about first impressions, right? We tout that we are putting our reps as dedicated reps, which they are. So they are handling the email, the phone, the LinkedIn. They're handling all the channels. They know your product inside and out. They know your program inside and out. They're working for your program as an extension of you. And so those are things that, come with a premium for sure, but it's also what you want in this day and age with all the spam, and all the things that you're getting hit with. You want someone who knows what they're saying and can have that first impression. And you're going to have to pay a program fee for someone to have dedicated resources there. So
I think that's a great place to land the episode. Thanks very much, Gabe, it was a lot of fun talking about this. I could talk about this all day, man.
Yeah, me
I mean,
too,
it would be
man.
really even fun to like get on a call on a podcast, like listen to some calls actually happening. Maybe we should do that,
I'm
like
in.
greatest hits podcast,
Love it. Yeah, we're down. Well, this
Um,
has been really good, Ken. Thanks so much for the opportunity. I hope your listeners can take a couple nuggets away from this. And like again, I'm a huge fan of yours.
Thanks. Likewise. And one other thing, what's with the guitar? What kind of guitar is it? And what do you play?
It's a black acoustic guitar, and that's about as all I got. I'm not good. I got it as a gift, and I play to try to pass the time, but I'm not very good. And it's a new hobby that I've started recently. So I try to keep it close to me, so for easy access.
Well, yeah, hobbies keep you singing. So good for you. Hey, if folks want to reach out to you, learn more about Alleyoop, how can they do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great resource to connect with me directly. Just go to my LinkedIn profile. It's Gabriel Lullo. And we do post every single day. So we provide a lot of free content in this space. And then if you have company questions, reach out to our website, alleyoop.io.
And if aspiring or hungry SDRs want to cold call you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, my number is very accessible. I'm in everywhere. So you can reach out to me right on my LinkedIn. You can reach out to me right on my website, and you just give me a cold call.
All right. So they'll have to find you. Don't make it too easy. I like it.
Sounds good.
If people want to reach me, I'm on LinkedIn/in/Ken Lempit. My demand generation agency, Austin Lawrence, is at austinlawrence.com. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, please do so wherever podcasts are distributed. That's the SaaS Backwards podcast. Hey, Gabe, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks for listening to the SaaS Backwards podcast, brought to you by Austin Lawrence Group. We're a growth marketing agency that helps SaaS firms reduce churn, accelerate sales, and generate demand. Learn more about us at www.austinlawrence.com. You can email Ken Lempit at kl@austinlawrence.com about any SaaS marketing or customer retention subject. We hope you'll subscribe, and thanks again for listening.